Good afternoon and welcome to today's session. And today is the first of the sessions in the cybersecurity readiness module. Now, for those of you who were online earlier in the week, you'll know that the session is a repeat of a workshop that we did, a face-to-face workshop that we did last week. The important thing about this particular module, very different from the other modules as part of the export program, is that this one you really are expected to attend all of the sessions in the module if you want to be considered for certification at the end of the module. But we'll speak about that a little bit later. I'm Collins Rex. I'm a director with the Global Trade Professionals Alliance, and the GTPA is an organisation that cultivates international standards within the industry, and our aim is to create a trade environment that is both inclusive and trusted by all. And the GTPA, of course, has partnered with Global Victoria to deliver this comprehensive export skills program. And for all the details of all the modules and all the sessions as part of those modules, you can go to the address that you see on your screen. For the Cyber Readiness module, we've also partnered with the Cyber Readiness Institute. The Cyber Readiness Institute convenes senior leaders of global companies and supply chain partners. It shares cybersecurity best practices and resources, and it develops contents and tools to improve the cyber readiness of small and medium enterprises. The Cyber Readiness Institute is based out of the United States. I just draw your attention to the disclaimer on the screen, and please, as always, bear in mind that if you are going to use any of the information imparted in today's session and you are going to use that in your business, make sure that it is applicable to you and your own circumstances. And also just note again that this webinar is being recorded. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. And for me, this is the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples who might be joining us today. As I mentioned, I am Collins Rex. I'm a director of the GTPA, and I also own a small consultancy called Rex Ideas. And important to note for this session and for the remainder of this module, I am also a cyber readiness coach, the first certified cyber readiness coach for the Cyber Readiness Institute in Australia. So today's session is all about building a cyber ready culture in your company. It's not about being a tech head. It's not about knowing everything there is to know about technology and indeed hacking or any other such tech issue. It is about being aware of how to change the culture in your company so that everyone in your company is aware of cybersecurity issues and takes responsibility for them. So today we're going to look at what is cyber readiness, why cyber readiness matters, particularly for SMEs, prioritizing what to protect, and the role of the cyber leader in your company. And I'm also going to talk you through what you can expect over the remainder of this module. As I mentioned, today is a repeat of the first session for those of you who weren't able to make it to our face-to-face workshop. And after today, there will be 5 other webinars. So first of all, what is cyber readiness? Well, cyber readiness quite simply is taking practical steps to prevent cyber attacks by focusing on human behavior related to 4 core issues and knowing what to do if an incident occurs. And we'll be looking at those 4 core issues a little bit later on today, and then in a great deal more detail in coming sessions. So the approach that we take over the course of this module, and indeed in getting companies cyber readiness in general, is for you to appoint a cyber leader in your company. Now, I'm assuming that those of you attending today's session are going to be the cyber leaders for your company. It's all about focusing on human behavior. It's about using guidance and tools on preventative measures. And if preventative measures fail, practical incident responses. It's also about creating a cyber readiness culture in your business. And very importantly, it's about committing to supply chain security. So the goal of getting cyber ready is embedding cyber readiness in the way in which people do their jobs. And people are absolutely key to this process. Any process that you implement needs to be practical and simple, or people will not follow it. Any technology that is used needs to enhance cybersecurity while still enabling job performance. And again, here, if the processes are too onerous, people will find ways to circumvent them. If the technology that you use, so any software, for example, that you have installed on company machines that make it safer, but also more cumbersome for people to do their jobs because the firewalls are really difficult to penetrate. They have to go through too many checks and balances before they can download a document, etc. People, again, will find a way to switch off or circumvent. So the 4 core issues that need to be addressed if you are going to change the culture fundamentally around cybersecurity in your organization is passwords and multi-factor authentication, software updates, phishing, and the use of USBs and secure file storage and transfers. And again, we'll look at these in more detail. So why does cyber readiness matter for SMEs? Well, you might think that you have the situation under control. You know exactly what you're doing in your business. You've got a really strong handle on every issue that could be a problem from a cybersecurity perspective. But what about the third parties who engage with your business? How secure are they? And how aware are they of the issues that could arise, and indeed the issues that they could have impacting on your business? And then something else that we hear all the time is that, well, I'm just a small business. I don't have anything valuable to protect. So, why do I need to bother? Well, the truth is, if you are part of a supply chain, you might be the weakest link in that supply chain. And as a result of your being attacked, you can leave your customers vulnerable to attack. So it really is very important that you understand that everybody is connected. We live in a fundamentally connected world, and within your supply chain, every single business could potentially be a threat to every other business in that supply chain if they don't take adequate measures to protect themselves. Now, there are trends in supply chain risk at the moment. There are ways in which supply chains have changed over the last few years, particularly in the last couple, and that has increased the cyber risk. So first of all, there's globalization. Everyone now has suppliers, channel partners, clients in many countries across the globe. And that also has led to the outsourcing of some core business functions. That outsourcing means that every time you send a part of your business to a third party, that third party could fundamentally introduce risks into your own business. Manufacturing has also become very globalized over time. And even though, as a result of the COVID pandemic, a lot of manufacturing is becoming more localized, there have been permanent shifts in the way in which we manufacture and the way in which we think about our supply chains. Research and development is very often not done in the country in which you conduct most of your business. You might have service providers who sit outside of Australia and are not part of your business, even though they're contracted to your business. Logistics, of course, by its very nature, is an extended process. you don't necessarily put all your goods into your own trucks and get them somewhere, and all the documentation that enables that. And you certainly are not flying your own goods around the world with all the various bits of process, procedure, and documentation that goes with that. And then, of course, human resources as well. We live in a disconnected society from the perspective of being in a single office. COVID has ensured that people are working from home and more remotely, and of course the hybrid work as well, which in some ways is even more risky. If people are coming into the office and possibly using their own laptop because that's the one they're comfortable using at home, they could be introducing risks into the network in the office. And of course, you can't keep a very strong handle on everything that people do in their own environments. So just to give you a sense of some of the statistics around this, and if these statistics frighten you, that's exactly what they're intended to do. So Advisor Smith ran a survey of about 1,100 SMEs last year, and they found that 42% of all small businesses surveyed experienced a cyber attack in last year. And if you look at the sorts of attacks that were occurring, leading the charge was phishing. 23.7% of all companies surveyed had had some sort of phishing attack. 18.6% suffered a data breach, 16.5% a malware attack, 14.8% a denial of service attack, 11.3% a ransomware attack, and 15% had some form of other cyber attack on their businesses. Now, conversely, if we look at what companies have been doing to protect themselves, those same surveyed SMEs said only 21.3% of them had implemented a strong password policy. Only 20.4% had implemented some form of multi-factor authentication. 16.6% implemented data encryption. 16.4% purchased cybersecurity software, which in itself is really alarming if you think of how many did not. 15.9% said they regularly train their employees on cybersecurity, and 9.4% said they had hired a cybersecurity consultant. So as we can see, the threat is very real, but the mitigation of that threat is still lagging seriously behind. Now, when we look at ransomware and we start thinking about some of the implications around ransomware, ransomware is a very serious threat. Ransomware results in data loss and it results in business continuity disruption. Now, a case that I want to bring to your attention, and this is something that you probably are aware of because it made headlines all over the media in Australia and indeed internationally, was a product supply chain issue that arose for Toyota. Toyota's supply chain was breached. It was a smaller company downstream of Toyota who had the ransomware attack, and that attack allowed the supply chain to be breached, and it fundamentally affected the way in which Toyota was able to operate. And Toyota ended up losing fortunes of money and a lot of competition and downtime as a result. In the case of ransomware, and again, very simplified, ransomware is essentially your files are hijacked and held to ransom. Until you pay the ransom, you cannot access your own files, your own systems. It's particularly dangerous in the case of institutions like hospitals, where it has occurred and is continuing to occur and increasingly occurring. And you can think what might happen if a hospital loses access to its client files. If you can't deal with your patients, you can't treat your patients, people die. So there are two essential supply chain strategies. There's the product supply chain, which I've already mentioned as a result of Toyota, and there's the software supply chain, and the Lodge4j category attack was an example of that. So thousands of small and medium-sized businesses make up a single multinational company's supply chain. SMEs are linked into the multinationals' planning and production systems, and they typically have less sophisticated technology and less rigorous people and process systems. So instead of hackers attacking the big guys because they know it's going to be hard, they attack the smaller ones downstream, and through that method, they gain access to the bigger ones further up. Hackers target the SME with ransomware, and then they go to the multinational for payment. And the increase of this has been absolutely tied back to the hybrid workforce and that working from home scenario where people might just be a little bit more lax in their own environment than they would in an office. So if we look at the reality of ransomware, typical ransomware attacks cost 10 to 15 times more than the ransom demand itself. And this is cost in downtime, cost in restoring systems, etc. The average cost of recovery from a ransomware attack in 2021 was estimated at about 1.85 million US dollars. The average company downtime post-attack, 21 days. You can imagine what happens to a production facility like Toyota's if they are down for 21 days. And what is even more frightening is that only 60% of all data is recovered even once the ransom has been paid. So there is permanent loss. Those industries that are most at risk: education, retail, professional and legal services, central government, IT services, manufacturing, energy and utilities, healthcare, local government, and financial services. These are also the industries that very often have the most to lose and therefore are far more likely to pay the ransom. Now, one of the reasons why this matters to smaller businesses is because the supply chains are complex and complicated, and the bigger guys upstream are very conscious of the danger posed by the smaller guys, and as a result, they will not deal with companies who do not have adequate cybersecurity measures in place. So multinational companies are going to evaluate the data protection and cybersecurity programs of all their potential suppliers or channel partners. Investors too are going to do that due diligence before they're investing, and not just investing in your business, but investing in your customer's business. There are various companies that are working with CRI to improve their defenses, and that really is just a case in point of why this is so important. So when we start thinking about what to protect, particularly for a small business, it might be impossible for you to protect every single aspect of your business. So you need to decide what is most important to you. And that is what you're going to concentrate on first, and eventually you will expand to the other areas of your business. So in the first instance, which of these two main areas is more important to you? Data loss or business continuity? If it's data loss, then there are certain things that you have to be conscious of in the first instance, and that includes trade secrets. So what access is there potentially to anything that makes your business do what it does as well as it does, and what happens if you lose that? Confidential employee information. Of course, all the data that you hold on your employees is vitally important to protect because it fundamentally affects your employees and their privacy. Personal health information, personally identifiable information, confidential business information, and confidential customer information. If data is breached and you lose customer information, your customers are not going to be very happy with you. You are going to have to inform them of the breach, and you are going to have to mitigate any issues that might arise. The second component is business continuity. And here we're looking at all those things that can stop you operating. And that includes email and communications. Of course, they're also a really soft way and a very easy target for hackers to enter your business. Your website, very easy to breach in many cases, and particularly if people don't consider their websites to be important because they don't conduct business through the websites. So if you're an e-commerce business, there's every chance that you've got really robust cybersecurity measures in place to protect your website because you're dealing with customer information, payment details, and so forth. If you're not an e-commerce business, you might be a little bit more slack in your website. Things like service and product delivery will be impacted if you have an attack that makes it impossible for you to conduct your business. If you lose access to all your customer information, how do you process orders? How do you process payroll, for example, if you can't access your files? And how do you get paid if you don't know that you have or have not invoiced a customer, for example? So when we start looking at a risk-based approach and a way in which to get you more conscious of cyber issues and your entire team, you need to prioritize which are the systems and which of the data streams are the most important for you to protect. Understand what is going to affect your business most if there's a breach, and prioritize the protection of those things. Identify as well the most likely ways that things could be lost or damaged. So what is the most likely way that this important data and these important systems are going to be damaged in your business? Is it through email attacks that could plant phishing software? Is it through those potential ransomware attacks, etc.? Determine what would cause the most damage. Think about the damage of the data loss or the public release of the data. If what is released is your private employee records, for example, and your employee records, particularly if you're a larger business, include confidential issues about your employees' mental health, etc., think of the damage that could be done to not just you, but to those employees. Also think about the damage that can be done to your business if your systems are down for even a few hours, but up to several weeks. What happens if you can't access anything and your business cannot function? Think about the direct financial costs, but also the cost to recover everything that you have lost, and very importantly, the cost of the damage to your reputation. And we've all in the last while seen reports of things like emails being leaked and very important and very confidential information that should not have got out into the public getting out, and what that does to personal relationships and business relationships, text messages that become part of the public record, etc. So I want you at the end of today's session and between today and the following session next Friday to think about what you're most concerned about. Is it data loss or compromise? Is it business continuity, or is it both equally? And we'll be discussing that next week. So let's talk about cyber leadership. For small businesses, it's very important that someone in the business takes control of the cyber functionality of that business. We want somebody who steps up and keeps an eye on things, informs people of the risks, makes sure that they're across the latest breaches that are occurring, make sure that people are doing the correct thing as they move through their day-to-day jobs. For this cyber leader to be able to do what they need to do, they need support from the business management. Now, if you're the cyber leader and you're also the owner of the business or the general manager of the business or whatever, you probably already have the support you need. If you are the cyber leader, but you have a CEO who sits above you, it is very important that the CEO and the leadership team buys into this, because they need to allocate resources for the implementation of any measures, and that means there's staff time involved. They need to be made aware of the risk, and they need to fundamentally understand that risk. As the cyber leader, you need to build awareness of the importance of cybersecurity, and that means you need to inform the leadership, who then also has to be aware of the importance of this. Leaders need to show visible support for the cyber leader. If they do not, it'll be very difficult for you as the cyber leader to do what you need to do your job. Now, the cyber leader's mission is the creation of a cyber-ready culture in your organization, and this is done through implementing practical policies and educating your employees about the importance of cyber-ready behavior. And to help your organization put the proper plan in place, you also need to prepare them for any cyber security incident. And again, that is vitally important. So as I said at the start of today's session, cyber readiness is all about the people in your organization and their behavior. So your goal is to embed cyber readiness in how every person does their job, to develop good cyber habits, and to create a culture of cyber readiness in the organization. And to achieve this, cybersecurity policies and procedures need to be as practical as possible. For you to be the cyber leader, you really do need to have very strong people skills, because you are going to sometimes ask people to do things that are not popular. So if you have, for example, taken a walk around the office and you've seen that people have written their passwords on post-it notes and stuck them on the screens of their computers, you're going to have to tell them to take those post-it notes down, and that might not be very popular. You are going to have to tell them how to deal with issues around personal computers, password protections. You're going to have to implement things like multi-factor authentication. You're going to have to control how people download software updates, etc. And all of this we will be dealing with a little bit later on in the series, and we'll be talking about the ways in which you can talk to and deal with your staff so that they go along on the journey rather than kick against the pricks. You also need to be able to effectively drive change, and you need to create a culture of cyber readiness. You need to be comfortable with technology, but that doesn't mean you need to be a tech head. Technical knowledge is less important than an understanding of what the technology does and how it works. Of course, you need the capacity to handle this role alongside all your other day-to-day work commitments. And you really do need to be interested in cybersecurity, but you need, more importantly, to understand the impact of cyber attacks. And you need the support of your organization's leaders, and they need to give you the appropriate level of authority. So as we move through the next 5 weeks of this cybersecurity training, we're going to look at ways in which you can deal with specific scenarios that might occur in your businesses and how you can address those behavioral changes that need to occur. We're also going to talk about how you understand the difference between building awareness, gain commitment, or teaching people how to implement changes. And there will be an emphasis on ongoing communication. And we will be focusing on developing one habit at a time. And there's a theme that you can go through, and also how you have those short, sharp alerts so that people are conscious of the threats that are currently out in the world. Now, what we're going to be doing over the next few webinars, and as I said, there are 5 of them coming up. We're going to start off by looking at those 4 core cybersecurity issues, starting with passwords and multi-factor authentication, and how important it is for businesses to regularly change passwords to ensure that passwords are strong, and wherever possible, multi-factor authentication is put in place. We're also going to touch on the importance of software updates and how automatic software updates should not be allowed, for example, how there needs to be a process to vet the updates that come into any business, and that not everybody has access to make the decision on whether software is updated or not, to avoid those issues around how software comes into your network. We will be spending quite a bit of time on phishing and how phishing is an attack that occurs because of fundamental errors in the way in which people behave, and how important it is to change that behavior along with changing the consciousness of phishing. Because phishing, of course, is one of the key ways in which hackers enter your business and enable ransomware attacks. We're also going to look at USBs and secure file sharing, and again, why and how it is important to safeguard any outside influences into the network of your business. If all else fails and you still suffer an attack, of course, you need to know how to respond. So we will be looking at how you prepare an effective incident response plan and how you can implement that response plan quickly and easily to avoid as much disruption to your business as possible should an attack occur. And we're also going to look at how you build that all-important culture of cyber readiness. And if you've gone through the entire module, you've attended all of the sessions, we will then give you the opportunity to put your hand up if you want to become a CRI certified cyber ready leader. And 10 companies that have gone through the program will be able to have their leaders certified. And we'll talk about that in more detail as we move through the program. So one cyber leader in each SME, and appointed by the company. And again, as I said, I'm assuming that those of you who are attending the sessions are the ones who will be the cyber leaders. You do need to attend all of the webinars that are coming up, and we will select you in conjunction with Global Victoria. And if you are selected, you then need to complete a further online cyber readiness program, which should take you probably about 10 hours of additional work. You will then be able to train your employees, and there's a playbook that you will need to complete as well. So that gives you a really good understanding of where we're going to with this particular module around cyber readiness and cyber security. I'm really hoping that all of you are going to follow through on the entire module and really get stuck into the nitty-gritty as we move through the program. If there are any questions now, I'm more than happy to take them, and you can type them in the chat box and we'll address them. And if you don't think of any questions now, but you do have any further down the track, you're more than welcome to drop me an email, and you can see my email address there. So if you want to know more about the certification, for example, and what is involved in going down that route, or any other questions that you might have, more than happy to take them as you think of them, and feel free to send me an email. So the next session is where we start drilling down into those 4 issues and taking a bit of a deep dive into those issues. And that is a week from today, online, exactly the same format as has gone through today. If there aren't any questions, and it certainly doesn't look as if there are, I am more than happy, as I said, to take any questions offline. And thank you very much for joining me today and for making the effort to be here when you couldn't be at the face-to-face workshop. It really is important that you get a sense of how all of this is going to hang together. And we must tick that technical box of attending all of the different sessions as well. So all that remains then is to say thank you very much for your attention today. And I look forward to the pleasure of your company at the next cyber session a week from today. And also, of course, any of those other sessions that we have coming up over the course of the week. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon and a great weekend. And we'll catch up again very soon. Goodbye.